Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here at the Wealth Orders podcast, and today I'm joined with Keith Henderson. He's the president and CEO of Latin Metals, a prospect generating company focused in Latin America, both on base metals and precious metals. The ticker symbol is LMS on the Toronto Stock Exchange and LMSQF on the OTCQB market. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Kyle. Thanks very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Where are you calling in from anyway?
We're in Vancouver, uh, and we've been in Vancouver for a while. And usually in my line of work, we find ourselves traveling a lot and moving all over the world, but it's not been like that recently. So yeah, everything's a little bit different now, at least for the foreseeable future.
For sure. Yeah, kind of a standstill here.
Yeah.
Um, so Keith, I like starting off the podcast by asking the guest the same question. So I'm 25 years old. What were you doing from 20 to 25?
Oh, let me see. In my late teens, I went to a university in England, in the UK. I'm from Belfast in Northern Ireland, so I kind of went across the Irish Sea to England. I entered into a course that I completely failed at. So after a year, I got kicked out of that and I came back to my home country and started again. And that was fine. Then I went into geology, which I was really enjoying, and I did a degree in geology. Then I got a little bit of work. Then I did a master's degree in petroleum geology.
Mhm.
And around that time, then I was looking for work in petroleum geology, but I couldn't find any. The oil industry was in a terrible state at that time. So I got offered a job in Africa looking for gold, and I went there, and that was it. So I've been looking for minerals of some description or another, be it precious metals or base metals, for my entire career. I've worked in most continents in a lot of different parts of the world, but for that key period, 20 to 25, I was just kind of finishing my education and getting into those first roles in Africa, which I just enjoyed that so much. It was some of the best times of my life. I really had a good time.
Nice. Yeah, maybe talk a little more about you sharpening your teeth. Like, which projects are there any I might be aware of? And was it copper, gold, everything? Because right now, Latin Metals is focused on copper, really, and gold, right?
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of my career has been in the base metal realm, copper, and actually more so, I've done a lot of zinc work in the past,
Okay.
both in Sweden and in Ireland. Base or precious metals, Africa was a big focus for precious metals, and I worked in a number of countries in Africa over those initial 5 or 6 years. It was a very interesting time to be a young geologist. And it's a great start in life. We come out of college with debt, and we need to get into work, and we need to put money together, and that's not that easy to achieve. But when you take these kind of roles which take you to far-flung places, and you spend your entire life in a foreign land doing this kind of work, but you're also not really having any costs in life, so you're getting expenses. You don't have to pay for accommodation. You don't have to pay for anything really.
Hmm.
So after a couple of years, you find yourself in a position where you can put a deposit down on a house. You've got some money. It's a good way to start, while you're still young, while you're not got any particular ties in life, and just go and look at these opportunities in different places and have a good time. And that's what I liked most about it. I thought it was really interesting.
Very nice. Yeah. Yeah. It helps when the work pays for your living expenses for sure.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's something that's a bit unique to some industries, like the mining industry. This is commonly what happens, but not so much now. In those days, in the early to mid 90s, it was common for people to go away for 3 4 months at a time, and then when you had a break, it was for a week or two, and that's not so much the case anymore. It's the work life is much more structured for geologists these days, and geologists they work for 3 weeks on, a couple of weeks off. It's a lot more friendly to lifestyle, I think. But in those days, it was not. It was just head down and go for it.
So let's talk more about your career now. You're a CEO of another company too, Velocity Minerals
Yeah,
in Bulgaria, right?
yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah.
you're not. you're not an outlier in this industry. There's a few CEOs that for different companies. I'm just wondering how do you manage your time with that, and where do you put your emphasis?
Well, I work for both companies. It's not a particularly easy thing to do, and it takes a lot of time. So I work 7 days a week, mostly. I work far too much, but I really enjoy it, and I enjoy what we're doing with both of those companies. Bulgaria is focused on gold exploration, or Velocity is focused on Bulgaria and gold exploration, and they're fairly advanced projects. And we have a big team out there, so there's probably 35, 40 people in the country who are working for us. Latin Metals is a different kind of model. It has different time commitments in a sense because we are in the business of acquiring projects and acquiring them quite cheaply if we can, using
Hmm.
our experience and our expertise in those countries to be able to acquire properties without a big outlay of cash. And then what we try to do that with those projects is basically to farm them out or option them out to larger companies so that the larger companies are going to do the work and spend the money. And that has a number of advantages for the company, but it also means that we're not really involved in day-to-day exploration. We do a certain amount. We've got a very, very good exploration manager in Peru who's moving some of those projects along for us and getting them to the point where another company might come and option them out. But we don't have very large teams of people. We don't have
Hmm.
35, 40 employees working for us. It's just a few key individuals who are helping to move everything along.
Yeah, for sure. And why don't you go in more depth about these key individuals? It's Eduardo, right? That's in Peru. And why don't you go ahead and talk about your intellectual property
Yeah,
in the boots on the ground in Latin America?
Eduardo is a unique individual. He's a fairly young geologist. He's Peruvian, and what a lot of Peruvian geologists will do is that they'll do everything they can to find secure employment with larger companies, and they'll be company men and they'll work for those companies their entire lives if possible. Uh, Eduardo took a completely different view of the world, and he's funded himself to come to critical mining conferences like PDAC in Toronto. He comes, he meets people, he finds out who he thinks he wants to work for and where the interesting opportunities are, and then he comes and he has a very entrepreneurial attitude to life, which I appreciate very much indeed. In fact, when I met him, the company didn't have a lot of money, and we weren't really in a position to pay him a lot of money. And he literally just worked for us almost for nothing until he created opportunities that allowed the company to move forward into finance. And then he was right there in the right place when we were ready to go. So entrepreneurial, very smart, lots of experience, and just the perfect guy for us. He's helping us to identify and to pick up very, very prospective properties throughout Peru and beyond as well. And I can rely on him. He's there all the time, and that's exactly what a company like this needs. Is just somebody who's 100% reliable.
And what about Argentina? Who's making things happen in Argentina?
In Argentina, we've got a guy called Mario Castelli who's been with the company and associated with myself and some other people on the board for many, many years. We've probably known him since about 1995, maybe even earlier. Uh, Myself, I've only worked in South America really since about 2006, 2007, but there are people on our board, some of our directors who've worked there since the very early 90s and been in and around a lot of these projects. So we have a tremendous amount of experience, not just with management, but with the board as well. And we've had a certain amount of successes in South America with previous companies, and these are the kinds of things that we hope to achieve with Latin Metals as well. Back in 2000 2008 and coming into 2009, Henk van Alphen and myself, Henk's on our board, and I at the time was working for him with another company, and we managed to drill a project, an iron ore project actually, that turned out to be quite successful. We spent a limited amount of money acquiring the project. We spent, a couple of $1 million exploring it,
Hmm.
and we were able to sell the entire project for $100 million cash,
Oh, nice.
which
Yeah.
at the time was a really big deal, and it was a huge success. Just I think we acquired the project for a matter of a few $100,000, and to go and spend a couple of $1 million on exploration it's what all of the companies like us try to do. And when you can translate that work into a big success, and the commensurate appreciation in the share price that the shareholders want to see as well, then and that's what we're all here for. So it's important. It's important when you're looking at opportunities like this to look for people who have some kind of track record in creating
Yeah.
this kind of success. There's a lot of people in this industry who advertise themselves as potentially having the ability to create this kind of value, but not all of them have done so, and not all of them will be able to do so. It's a high risk industry.
Hmm. So you guys sticking where like are you looking at other countries? It's just so far it's Peru and Argentina that I've seen.
Yeah, we have a lot of experience in both countries, probably particularly Argentina, and we're comfortable in both countries. I think that's enough for us now. Like that's not to say that if the right opportunity doesn't come along in Chile or anywhere else that we of course we'll look at it. But I think we're good in these two countries, and it limiting yourself to a couple of countries, it does a couple of interesting things for you. It
Hmm.
you know we're in two countries, not one, so we're not fully exposed to the jurisdictional risk of one of those countries. We've got a little bit of spread in terms of the governments that we're dealing with. But equally we're not in five countries, and there's a certain amount of overhead and general and administrative money that goes towards being in a country, and if you spread yourself too thinly between too many countries, suddenly you're raising money every 5 minutes just trying to stay alive, and it's better to kind of two countries is a good number, and it works really well for us. It's been
Right.
about perfect.
Now, how have those countries been with COVID? Because I know how's the company been affected by COVID? Because I know Peru, it's one of the worst in Latin America right now.
Yeah, so we haven't got massive exploration programs of our own going on, but we have been exploring in Peru. It certainly delayed us by a few months, and we had to ultimately get a special permit from the Peruvian government that would allow us to. We basically had to put together all of the protocols that we would work with, how we would go about doing our work, and once that was approved by the government, we were able to proceed. So it's been okay. We've been able to work. Where it's really slowed us down, though, is that a lot of the bigger companies that are maybe a little bit less nimble in that department, you we're trying to option our properties out, particularly in Argentina, to bigger companies. And we go through the process of signing a CA with a bigger company, and then we hope that that company will come and look at the property pretty quickly
Yeah.
and move as quickly as possible. And that's been really difficult. Some of the companies that we're dealing with, it's taken them 4 or 6 months to get on the ground to go and look at these properties, and that's purely a function of COVID. That would never be the case normally. So it's definitely slowed us down a little bit in that regard.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Um, you talked about the government and a permit. Now, I know Peru, they just have two parties left, but they're coming up with an election soon. Would that affect your business at all if one or the other get elected?
Uh, it can do, but no, not really. Like
Yeah.
over the years, when I've been working in places like Peru, I've been through several phases of time when investment bankers and all kinds of investors were getting very excited about an outgoing government and incoming government. Uh, you know, it's a mining country. It always has been.
Hmm.
Sometimes the government's a little bit less favorable towards mining than another government, but ultimately things continue. And when you've got so many people in the country employed in mining, it just keeps on going. And it's always the challenges are not so much with the government as with the communities. It's like since the time that I first started working in Peru until now, that's really the biggest change that I've seen. And it's a change for the better, by the way. Like it's taken the mining industry time to really start to pay attention to communities, not just to be paying lip service, but to actually be fully engaging with communities, making community agreements, having the approval and the social license from communities to be working. And and the change now is that communities are demanding that, and that's good.
Hmm.
They're demanding it. We're having to deal with it. We're dealing with it properly. And it means that when you see a news release from us saying we've done some work in an area, it means that automatically we have the approval of the community. We've talked to them before we went. Everybody's happy. Everything's okay. And That's how things should be. And it's not, unfortunately, when you look back at the mining industry's history, that's not always how things were, but it certainly is how things are now. And I think working within a country like Peru with such a mining history, that really helps. It means when you go to work with the communities, they already know what you're talking about. They have reasonable expectations as to how you're going to be able to help them. For example, at one of our copper projects that we're exploring out, we've helped the community with some materials for an irrigation project. So
Nice.
that's a real and meaningful impact on the community. It doesn't cost us so much money at this point.
Hmm.
As we progress further and we get more advanced in the project, we can afford to bring more money and more meaningful contributions to the community. So we start small and we aim to grow those contributions as the projects become more advanced, and that's, I think, the right approach.
I agree. I like that because my mom's actually Ecuadorian,
Oh, really?
and I know jobs are important there, and mining's a massive part of Peru's GDP.
Yeah.
But I think Canadians like myself might just be looking at returns on stocks, and I really do want to know if my investments are considering these ESG factors and the communities
Yeah.
because we're extracting all these resources from their country. I think we the least we can do is help out the communities there.
Yeah, precisely. And I think that's how things are going and how things will continue to go. Like, I think the rate of change within the industry is very rapid. I think very, very soon it will get to the stage where you will have to demonstrate your compliance with some of these principles, with some of the best practice before people will even consider investing. And so we all have to take it extremely seriously and make sure that we're doing things right, because
Hmm.
it's not going to work otherwise. Particularly, retail investors can invest in whatever they want to.
Yeah.
That's fine, but as far as institutional investment goes, it's got to be the right kind of projects, and the companies have to be doing the right things, or else the money just won't come. They'll never get funded.
Yeah. So I was going to actually ask you, when you're looking at partners, then because you're the one that has the land, when you're looking at these strategic partners, do you do that due diligence to, or if they just have a healthy balance sheet and trade on an exchange, is that good enough? Like,
I'll try and answer that question as honestly as possible. My priority is getting a deal done. Like, I know I'm behaving properly. I know as CEO of the company that Latin Metals will behave properly. But your question is a good one, because by extension, the companies that we bring in are also have to be behaving well. I think it goes without saying I'm not going to do a deal with a bunch of idiots. So
yeah.
the companies that we deal with have to have a certain level of seriousness about them. But moreover, I'm generally, more often than not, I'm looking for a major mining company or an intermediate scale mining company. So, and when you get to that scale of company, you're automatically in the right place as far as ESG goes. There's no option, and there's no way that you're not. So,
Hmm.
in the past, it's the ability to attract that kind of company is part of the skill of what we're doing here. Like, in my past and as part of my background, I worked with Anglo American for quite a few years, and so having that experience with bigger companies allows me to know what a bigger company is going to be looking for when they're looking for an investment with a prospect generator. I know what kind of work I need to do on a project to make it attractive to a company like that. And I also know that I have to look like a serious player. Like, producing terrible work and nonsense work, these guys are never going to fall for it. They're not stupid. You have to do the right things, and you have to have real projects, or else they're never going to do a deal with you. So I'm always looking for the bigger companies. Latin Metals and its predecessor, previously we had a deal with Yamana Gold, for example, over the course of a couple of years in Argentina. And about a couple of years ago, we also had a deal with Yamana Gold, who are another very serious company and a very
Hmm.
serious operator in Argentina as well. So these are the kinds of pedigrees of companies that we're looking for. They bring a few advantages, not just on the ESG level, but they also tend to have enough money to really give you a proper deal. They tend to be able to commit enough money to the exploration program so that the shareholders of Latin Metals can expect a reasonable level of news flow. They can expect the project to move forward in a timely fashion. Then they can expect that the work that these bigger companies are going to do is going to be very high quality. So those things are all very important. There's no point getting bad companies in. It doesn't serve the purpose. It doesn't get you anywhere. And so we always focus on the right partners.
Thank you. So you touched on Yamana Gold. What happened there? Because they had an option agreement with you and canceled it at that Organullo.
Organullo, yeah. Yeah, interesting question. They Organullo is a very large property. It's one of the largest geochemical anomalies in South America. It's about 8-9 kilometers long. It's got lots and lots of prospectivity. And over the years, the few companies that have looked at it have focused all of their work in one very small part of the property. And we see the potential there as being on the much larger scale property. And we think there's a lot of work to do there. Yamana, for reasons that they will best understand, came and almost just repeated work that had been done before. They didn't really step out from areas that had been previously explored. They didn't really look at the exploration potential of the project at all. And it's almost like, I would liken it to you're basically going back to repeat the work, but looking for a different answer. And guess what? You get the same answer. So it was an unusual approach. It wasn't what I expected them to do. And from my perspective, a bit of a lesson learned. Like, it's now, as I speak to other companies about potentially taking that project on, it prompts me to talk to them not just about how much they hope to spend and what they hope to do, but really what do they hope to do, and are they going to explore the property properly, and that impacts my decision on who I'm going to select to be the next company to do that work. So yeah, Yamana was probably a bit of a disappointment, although I will say they were a very good partner. They were good to deal with. The deal that they gave us was fair, and they dealt honestly with us throughout the whole process. It's just that they didn't really stick it out, and they left early, and that was not ideal for us. But that was also in a slightly different market. Like, we've enjoyed a really healthy gold market during a lot of last year. We're now into this amazing period when people are so interested in copper and battery metals, and there is copper potential at Organullo as well as gold, which is not something that a lot of people have focused on. So yeah, it's okay. We'll find another partner. I hope that in the next, let's say, 4 to 6 months, I'll be able to put something together and announce it. And this year's been a busy year. We've already, in 2021, we closed the sale of Mina Angela, which is a smallish deal. It's valued at about $1.2 million cash, I think. And to your point about royalties, we retain a 1.25% royalty. So the company that purchased the project from us is called Patagonia Gold. They have previously been in production. They're going to try and get this one into production, but it's an odd project. I would describe it as a non-core project to us. So it was in a province called Chubut, where the provincial government actually outlawed the use of cyanide. Sorry, I'm telling you the wrong thing. They actually outlawed open pit mining.
Okay.
So we had this project there, and it could not be mined. And we knew that the federal government and the province were in the process of putting together a referendum to potentially go back to the provincial population and say, look, or can we now go forward with mining in this province? But that was by no means a certainty. So, we just decided this wasn't something that we wanted to focus on, and we decided that we wanted to sell the property. So we managed to get ourselves a lot of cash, non-dilutive cash, which is important to us. And if Patagonia are going to be successful with the project, we're going to have a royalty, and that's perfect for us. We don't have to worry about the project anymore. We have no further costs, no further risk, and potentially we have some revenue coming in future years, and that's just perfect for a non-core property like this. That's exactly what we need.
I wonder why they bought it when that Chubut outlined or banned open pit. Why did they get it then?
They looked at it in a similar way to us, but had a different view, and they took the view that they thought that the referendum would come quickly within the political schedule. They took the view that if it came, it might be successful, and they were prepared to spend this kind of money to have that option there for their future, and that's fine for us. It worked for both parties. Like, for us, non-dilutive cash is the key thing. We raised money when we restructured Latin Metals and kind of put together this prospect generator model, and we raised some money in 2019, and we've never been back to the market. So this is great for shareholders. We've got 46 million shares out. There's a significant portion of that sitting with management and board. And we've never come back to the shareholders and said, we want to raise more money. We've never diluted the shareholders. So everyone that bought shares at that time or since knows what the position in the company is. They know what the structure of the company is. And we'll have to raise money at some point, but it's not going to be $5-10 million. It's not going to dilute shareholders. It's going to be small raises to keep our model moving forward. And in most cases, we're able to get cash payments. So getting cash payments for Mina Angela, which is frankly a project that I never thought would go anywhere, it's perfect. It's putting money in the bank. It allows us to operate. We got cash payments from Yamana as well. And in almost every deal that we're looking at cash payments. The other deal that we announced in 2021 in Q1 was with Libero Gold and Copper, and they're optioning out our Esperanza Copper Gold project, and that's again a great deal. Like it's a 2-year option for them. So over the course of 2 years, they've got to spend $4.4 million US. 500,000 of that is straight payments to us. They also pay the underlying owners. They put $2 million of work into the ground, and we retain in that case a 30% interest. It's perfect, and they've got a great technical team. I know that they're going to do good work. I know the guys pretty well, and they're going to spend that money. It doesn't cost us anything. We get to the other end of that deal, and hopefully we've got a project that's way more valuable, and we still own 30% of it, and we move forward from there. So this is the model, and it's just working really well for us. So it's a matter of what we can move along now. Like I've got so much on the go that, as I said, it's kind of been slowed down a little bit by COVID, but there's a few deals sitting there, and if I can get them closed, even in this COVID environment, it's going to be a really positive year for us. We closed Mina Angela and Esperanza in Q1. Hopefully Q2 and Q3 we can get a few more of our projects in Argentina optioned out, and that's mission accomplished. And then once that's done, it's just sit back and wait for the money to get spent, wait for the results, and see where it goes. And if we can get significant expenditure into some of these more advanced projects like Organullo, the shareholders and the investors in Latin Metals will see quarter by quarter. They'll just see lots of results, lots of drill results coming in, and
Yeah,
they
it's exciting.
basically get what every other exploration company gives them, except that they're not getting diluted every step of the way, and they're not having to look at all of these equity financings so regularly that causes so much dilution and so much heartache for shareholders. So yeah, it's been a good model, and it's based on the fact that we've got such a lot of good projects sitting there, and a lot of projects that we acquired so cheaply. For example, that Mina Angela deal that we sold to Patagonia, we originally optioned it out in a predecessor company in 2003, and we optioned it out to Hochschild from there, and Hochschild made all of the payments. So the project basically cost us nothing over the period of time that we owned it. Organullo that we're now trying to option out to a major company is exactly the same. We staked it years ago, probably 10 years ago, and every year we pay a little bit of money just to maintain the taxes on the property, but we don't have any costs of our own in maintaining that property. So we get another company to come in and spend all of this money. It's just fantastic.
Now, I understand the concept completely, and I'm just worried because I don't know how young or how new the listeners are that are out there. And I just want to make it clear, when you're trading at what you're trading at around 15 cents today, like, it's not investing, it's speculating. And that's fair. But maybe explain why this, if people want to speculate with their money, why this prospect generating business model is a safer bet than say a one property type project. Like, really just dumb it down to a grade 2 level. What is a prospect generator, if you can?
Prospect Generator is a company that has acquired or can acquire properties cheaply. We option them out to bigger companies. They spend the money, and we see the benefit of that through a retained minority interest, whether that's a 30%, 25%, or a royalty, whatever that is. Just taking a step back on the exploration industry, we are most closely associated, I guess. The best analogy for what we do in this industry is the pharmaceutical industry. So pharmaceutical industry will go after drug after drug after drug, trying to find the one that's going to make them the big money.
Right.
Very, very, very high risk, but when they get it right and when it goes through the trials and when it gets approved, the returns are off the scale. Mineral exploration is exactly the same. Very, very high risk, but when one gets it right, when you find something, when you continue to drill it, when it continues to deliver and it eventually becomes a mine, the returns are fantastic. So that is the exploration industry, and that's what we're doing. The difference with what I'm doing is I'm hanging in for a minority interest in that big return at the end. I want to have 30% of that at the end when it's successful, but I'm not spending any of the money. So I've got none of the costs. Exploration companies that fund this themselves, they exist for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. They raise $5 million, they raise $10 million, they keep raising money, they keep diluting the company forever, and they may or may not ever be successful. We're not doing that.
Mhm.
We're optioning it out. We're having other people spend the money in every case. And we do spend a little bit. We have to spend something to get our projects from zero to where someone's going to be interested enough to option it from us. But we're avoiding all of the money raising.
Mhm.
And so you don't have the dilution, you don't have the cost upfront, but
Yeah.
hopefully if it's successful, you're right there.
And ideally, the option payments cover all the expenses and then some. Hmm. Now, what's the?
So the
Go ahead.
company option the company optioning your property, they'll cover all of the cost of whatever you're paying to an underlying vendor. They'll pay all of the costs of the exploration. They'll be paying you some cash as well, so that I stay alive without having to go to look for money from my shareholders as well. So yeah, it's a win-win.
Now, I love my royalty companies. Now, could you explain the difference between the two models, royalty versus prospect generator?
We're really not a royalty company, and
Mhm.
that's really not our business. But we are going to hang in there for a royalty. So when we look at retaining a minority interest, in some cases that's going to be a royalty, and that could happen in more than one case. It's happened in the case of Mina Angela, where it's 1.25%, and that is our interest in the company, in the project. 100% of it is otherwise owned by Patagonia. In the case of Esperanza, we end up with 30% ownership, but even that project, you look at that and maybe there are huge costs ahead of the company or ahead of the project even at that time, and we may opt to dilute in that case down to our royalty as well, and that's all built into the deal as well. So if we choose not to maintain our 30% interest, we have the option of going to a 2% royalty. So that's the only context that we really look at royalties, and we're not really in the royalty business at
Mhm.
all.
Yeah. The only reason I bring it up is because I know there's a few out there. Altius and EMX come to mind where they actually started as prospect generators, right? And then they became royalty companies. So it's nice when other people's monies are doing all the work.
Yeah, and that's really a function of, like, Altius did it through becoming a very successful company. They were successful in their exploration. Their company model was successful. They became cash rich. They had opportunities. They had support, and they were able to transition into a royalty company, which is a big step for a company like that. And they did a great job. So
So what's Lat Meadows' 5-year plan right now? What's your 5-year outlook?
the 5-year plan is really what we want to do is we're creating opportunities for shareholders, but we also want to create potentially an exit. There's really two ways that can happen. We could have a successful project that leads to that project being acquired, and a large injection of cash coming into the property as a result of that. Or we have a number of projects that are doing well and it leads to acquisition of the company itself, which would be a preferable exit because it's much cleaner for shareholders, because then shareholders simply say, well, I bought it in this year for this much money and I am selling it for
Mhm.
5 times, 10 times that amount, and we're out. And that's a liquidity event that shareholders really need. liquidity is important in a company. Latin Metals probably isn't the most liquid company in the market right now, but we are working pretty hard on that. We're doing things like this where we sit down and speak to industry guys like yourselves and try and get the word out on the company. We're working on social media. We're working on a whole range of other marketing strategies that hopefully will improve the liquidity and allow shareholders, if they choose to come in and out of the company. But ultimately, we're there for the long term and hopefully to get all shareholders to a really good exit.
Thank you. So why should a retail investor consider speculating in Latin metals this year? Copper and gold are both performing very well. So I know a lot of people are looking at this space, but why Latin metals?
Well, why now and why Latin metals? So there's maybe two different questions, and I'll answer them differently. But why now is because of the market. So there's 2 years ago, it was challenging to get our projects out to partners. This year, we have a lot of partners coming to us looking for our projects, and that's a function of gold price. It's a function of copper price. Major mining companies tend their budgets tend to react to the commodity price. So you get into a market like this, all of the guys working for the major companies, they suddenly find that they've got this huge exploration budget and they don't really have any properties and they don't have anywhere to spend it. And they're going to have to spend it because if they don't spend it, they'll never see the money again. So it kind of becomes you just find that all of the major companies are just desperate for projects. And that's exactly why we set this company up the way we did in 2019. We thought this was coming. We thought we were at the bottom of a cycle and we thought that this was going to happen. And so we just went about acquiring and securing as many quality projects as we possibly could, because we knew that when the time was right and when the budgets were sitting with these companies, they'd be absolutely desperate for projects. And that's what we're seeing. Like, companies are coming to us and that makes our lives very easy. Why Latin metals particularly? Honestly, there's not that many project generators around. So if you like the model, you don't have a lot of choice. And if you like the model in South America, you've got even less choice. So we're one of very few choices out there. But I think moreover, the background of management guys like myself, like Eduardo, like Mario, we've been in the industry for a long time. Eduardo, myself, we're technically very competent. We know how to identify and how to acquire a quality project, and we know how to find the partners for them. So, you're not, as you look at other project generators, anyone can set themselves up as a prospect generator and say, well, we're a prospect generator today, and this is what we're going to do. And they may not be able to do it. They may not have quality projects. They may not really be able to go to a major company and persuade them to do what they want them to do because the projects aren't up to scratch, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it comes down to, have we shown that we're able to do this in the past? Well, we've shown that we've been able to pick up really high quality projects in predecessor companies, like the iron project I was telling you in Peru. A couple of $100,000 to acquire it, sell it for $100 million. That's an exceptionally good success story. And it doesn't happen just randomly. It happens because the project that we acquired was excellent and that we saw the quality of the project and were able to negotiate a good deal. With this company, we've done it with Newmont and Yamana. I think I'm going to be able to do it again. We've already closed a couple of deals this year, so we're clearly on a roll. We're clearly able to do it, and in this market, more deals are going to come. So I hope that people who take the step of becoming shareholders in the company will get to the end of the year and say, okay, these guys have done what they said they were going to do. We've got this whole series of projects optioned out to other partners. We know what expenditure we can expect to see on them. We know what kind of level of results and data we can expect to see coming out. And it puts the investment in the context. You can see, well, all of these are like 3, 4, 5 year options. We know that then if these are successful on that time scale, this company is going to get there.
Perfect. Thanks for the detailed answer. Thanks, Keith. This has been great. I want to make sure we have enough time for the vault segment. It's one of my favorite parts of the interview. I just ask mentorship-like questions.
Okay, sure.
Until I gain my subscribe account on YouTube, it won't be available, guys. So make sure to like and subscribe and share. Get the word out if you like what you listened to today. But let's get into the vault.
The younger generation now, and I look at, for example, in Vancouver where I'm living, the price of housing, the I don't know how young people are supposed to come out of education with debt and get onto this property ladder. I think they can't actually. I think it's probably not even an option for a lot of people. It's extremely difficult. So I'm awfully conscious that I'm not answering your question and I'm not giving you any specific advice, but
Mhm.
it's very, very tricky, and I don't know that I can give you a single answer other than be creative, be honest, and yeah, maybe trying to find a mentor of your own is really the answer. It's helped me enormously. Like I've really benefited from having really good people in my life, and not just the guy that I was just speaking about, but other people who gave me huge opportunities and gave me support. And surrounding yourself with the right people really is the key thing.
Sounds like I'm doing it right. I'm forcing that with this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And you're exactly right. You are doing so. And I'm a fan of podcasts. Some I've got a number of people, even in Ireland, younger guys that I listen to, and yeah, I like what they're doing. It's a great way to network, and it's a great way to get yourself close with a lot of people really quickly. It's
Hmm.
very smart.
Great. Well, thanks, Keith. Thanks for all your insight on the company as well as mentorship like advice. But I like letting my guests close off. So here's your chance to talk about Lant Metals or whatever you'd like.
Uh, I really, I really like the prospect generator model. I really like what we're doing, and I think it's a better model than what most of the exploration companies are doing. I think the lack of dilution is hugely important. I think the fact that we get other people to spend money is hugely important. We we reduce the discovery risk. As I said, it's such a high risk industry, and if you start to, but the pharmaceutical industry gets around that by having so many things on the go, and they increase their chances of having a big success so much by having so many trials on the go, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to have a critical volume of projects. We're trying to have them all funded by other companies so that there's so many opportunities for success, and therefore you reduce the risk of failure. Uh, there's a whole range of other risks that are periphery to that in this industry. Commodity risk, like we've talked a little bit about how the 2 years ago this would have been difficult, but for precisely that reason, what we were doing, it was the right time to do it, and now we're in exactly the right spot, and that really speaks to the commodity risk. Gold and copper both doing well. This is the time to invest, and I encourage lots of my friends to get into the exploration sector right now. I think it's the right place to be, recognizing that it's high risk and you need to have a balance as well in your life, but it's a good place to go. So yeah, I think the model and what we're doing is going to get more and more popular. I think the fact that there aren't very many companies doing it right now is good for Latin metals. If people really get this and they really want to try it, there's not very many places to go and try it. So
Hmm.
Latin metals is going to be one of the very few companies that you can go and look at. So yeah. So yeah, I hope
Perfect.
I hope the story resonates a little bit with some of your viewers and hopefully some new shareholders.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Keith. Appreciate your
Good.
time.
Thanks very much indeed. Cheers.
Have a good one.